I never thought I'd be the guy who has to share this kind of story. My name's Alex, and I've been married to Lisa for almost 10 years now. We met back in college and hit it off right away. She was everything I ever wanted, smart, beautiful, and with a smile that could light up a room. We didn't have any kids, but our life was full, with friends, family, and plenty of shared dreams. Things were good, or so I thought. We both had our careers. She was a marketing manager, and I was running my own small tech firm. We were busy, sure, but we always made time for each other. Or at least I tried to. I noticed things starting to change about 6 months ago. Lisa seemed more distant, less interested in spending time together. She'd come home late from work more often, and her excuses felt flimsy. One night she told me she had a business dinner with an old friend from college. She mentioned his name casually, Dan. I remembered Dan vaguely from her stories about college, but he was never someone I thought much about. Apparently, he'd become quite successful, running his own chain of fitness centers across the state. Lisa said they'd reconnected at a networking event. At first, I didn't think much of it. We all have friends, right? But then these dinners became more frequent. She'd come home late, smelling of a cologne I didn't recognize, with a faraway look in her eyes. When I asked her about it, she'd shrug it off, saying they were just catching up, talking about old times and business opportunities. I wanted to believe her, but there was a nagging feeling in the pit of my stomach. It was the little things, how she'd laugh at his texts, the way she'd dress up more when she knew they were meeting, and the fact that she seemed happier when she was getting ready to see him than she did when she was spending time with me. One weekend, Lisa told me she had to go to a conference out of town. It sounded legitimate. She showed me the itinerary, the hotel booking, everything. But something didn't sit right with me. I decided to check her phone when she was in the shower. There were messages from Dan, and they weren't the kind of messages you send to just a friend. They were flirty, intimate. My heart sank. I confronted her when she came out of the bathroom, dripping wet and surprised to see me holding her phone. I asked her straight up if she was having an affair with Dan. She denied it, of course, said I was overreacting, that they were just old friends catching up. She even cried, saying she couldn't believe I didn't trust her. But the seeds of doubt were planted, and they grew. Over the next few weeks, I kept an eye on things. I didn't want to be that paranoid husband, but the signs were all there. She'd smile at her phone, make excuses to leave the house, and her stories about where she'd been didn't always add up. Then one day, I got the proof I needed. Lisa had left her laptop open on the dining table, and an email notification popped up from Dan. It was an invitation to a weekend getaway, just the two of them. I felt like the ground had been ripped out from under me. I knew I had to do something, but I wasn't sure what. All I knew was that my life was about to change forever. As I sat there, staring at the email, the full weight of the situation hit me. This wasn't just a fling. Lisa had been seeing Dan behind my back, lying to me, and planning romantic getaways with him. I couldn't believe it. The woman I had loved and trusted for years was betraying me in the worst possible way. I felt a mix of anger, sadness, and disbelief. How could this have happened? How had I missed the signs? I needed to confront her, but I also needed to be sure. So I decided to gather more evidence. I started checking her messages more frequently, noting down her whereabouts, and cross-referencing them with what she told me. It was exhausting and heartbreaking work, but I needed to know the truth. And what I found out broke me completely. The following days were a blur of suspicion and quiet investigation. Lisa continued her pattern of late nights and secretive behavior, and I became more adept at snooping around without her noticing. I knew it wasn't healthy, this constant surveillance, but I felt like I had no other choice. The trust between us was shattered, and I needed to know the extent of her betrayal. One evening, she told me she had another business dinner with Dan. I watched her get ready, choosing an outfit that was more suited for a date than a work meeting. As she left, I made a decision. I had to know for sure. I grabbed my car keys and decided to follow her. It wasn't hard to tail her. She was too absorbed in her thoughts to notice my car a few vehicles behind hers. She drove to a fancy restaurant on the other side of town. I parked a block away and watched as she met Dan at the entrance. They hugged, and he kissed her on the cheek. It wasn't the kind of kiss you give to a friend or colleague. My heart pounded in my chest as I watched them through the restaurant window. They sat close, laughing and touching each other in ways that made my blood boil. It was like watching a movie. But this was my life. My wife. I snapped a few photos with my phone, feeling a mix of anger and sadness. This was the proof I needed, but it didn't make the pain any less. The next day, I decided to take it a step further. I needed more than just photos. I needed something undeniable, something that Lisa couldn't talk her way out of. So, I installed a small GPS tracker in her car and an app on her phone that would give me access to her messages and emails. It felt invasive and wrong, but I was desperate. The tracker revealed a pattern. She was meeting Dan at various locations, restaurants, hotels, even his house. The app showed me messages that left no doubt about the nature of their relationship. They weren't just talking business. They were sharing intimate details, making plans, expressing feelings that should have been reserved for me. One message in particular stood out. Dan was asking her to spend the weekend with him at a cabin he owned in the mountains. Lisa replied that she couldn't wait, that she needed to get away from all the stress and spend time with him. Reading those words felt like a punch to the gut. I knew I had to confront her, but I wanted to do it in a way that left no room for denial. I decided to wait for the weekend trip. It was risky, but I needed to catch them in the act. So, I bided my time, acting as normal as possible while Lisa continued her deceit. On the day she was supposed to leave, she told me she was going on a business retreat. She packed a bag with clothes that seemed too casual for a work trip, but I didn't say anything. I kissed her goodbye, feeling a mix of anger and heartbreak, and watched her drive away. As soon as she was out of sight, I jumped into my car and followed the GPS signal from her tracker. The drive to the cabin took a couple of hours, and I used the time to steel myself for what was coming. I arrived just after dark and parked a distance away, creeping through the woods until I could see the cabin. There was a light on inside, and I could see their silhouettes through the curtains. I moved closer, staying in the shadows, until I was right outside the window. What I saw confirmed everything. They were sitting on the couch, wrapped in each other's arms, kissing passionately. It was more than I could take. I pulled out my phone and started recording, capturing every moment of their betrayal. Finally, I couldn't watch any longer. I needed to confront them. I walked up to the front door and pounded on it, my heart racing. The sounds inside stopped abruptly, and a moment later Dan opened the door. His face went pale when he saw me. "What the hell are you doing here?" he stammered, trying to block my view of the inside. I pushed past him and saw Lisa standing there, her face a mask of shock and guilt. "Alex, I can explain," she started, but I cut her off. "Save it," I said, my voice shaking with anger. "I've seen enough. I know everything. How long has this been going on?" Lisa looked down, unable to meet my eyes. "It started a few months ago," she admitted. "I'm so sorry, Alex. I didn't mean for it to happen." "Didn't mean for it to happen?" I echoed, feeling a surge of rage. "You planned trips, you lied to me, you betrayed me. How could you do this?" Dan tried to step in, but I turned on him. "You stay out of this. This is between me and my wife." He backed off, hands raised. "Fine, but you need to calm down. Let's talk about this like adults." "Adults?" I laughed bitterly. "You're a piece of work, Dan. You knew she was married, and you pursued her anyway. You're both disgusting." Lisa started to cry, but I didn't feel any sympathy. "I want a divorce," I said flatly. "I'll be in touch with my lawyer." "We're done." I turned and walked out, ignoring Lisa's sobs and Dan's attempts to call me back. The drive home was a blur, my mind racing with thoughts of betrayal and anger. I knew this was the end of my marriage, but at least now I had the proof I needed to move on. When I got home that night, the silence was deafening. The house, once filled with laughter and love, now felt like a hollow shell. I tried to sleep, but the images of Lisa and Dan kept playing in my mind, a relentless loop of betrayal. I finally gave up and spent the rest of the night sitting on the couch, staring into the darkness, trying to figure out what to do next. The next morning, I called my lawyer. I told him everything, and he agreed to start the divorce proceedings immediately. It was a relief to have a plan, something concrete to focus on amidst the chaos of my emotions. I knew the confrontation wasn't over, though. I needed to face Lisa again, this time with a clear head and a plan. Lisa came home that evening, looking exhausted and disheveled. She didn't say anything when she walked in, just dropped her bag and sat down at the dining table. I joined her, the divorce papers in hand. "Alex, please," she started, but I held up my hand to stop her. "Save it, Lisa," I said, my voice steady but cold. I've heard enough. We're done. These are the divorce papers. I've already signed them. All you need to do is sign, and we can start the process. Tears welled up in her eyes as she looked at the papers. I don't want a divorce, she whispered. I know I made a mistake, but we can work through this. Please, Alex, don't throw away everything we have. Everything we have? I scoffed. You threw it all away the moment you decided to be with him. This isn't a mistake, Lisa. It's a choice you made repeatedly. There's no coming back from this. She reached across the table, trying to take my hand, but I pulled away. Alex, I love you. I was just lonely. You were always so busy with work, and Dan was there for me. I know it was wrong, but I was weak. Please. Can't we at least try to fix this? Her words were like knives twisting in the wound. You love me? I echoed bitterly. You have a funny way of showing it. How long have you been lying to me? How long have you been sneaking around, making me look like a fool? She broke down, sobbing. It started a few months ago. It was just talking at first, but then it became more. I never meant for it to go this far. I was going to end it, I swear. I felt a cold, hard anger settle over me. End it? You were planning a weekend getaway with him. Don't lie to me, Lisa. It's over. Just sign the papers. She cried harder, but I couldn't bring myself to feel sorry for her. I can't sign these, Alex. I can't just give up on us. I stood up, pushing the papers towards her. Then I'll file them without your signature. It will be messier and take longer, but I'm done. You've made your choices, and now you have to live with the consequences. She looked up at me, desperation in her eyes. What about us? What about the life we built together? I shook my head, feeling the weight of her betrayal. There is no us anymore, Lisa. You destroyed that. Now you need to accept it and move on. I left the room, needing to put some distance between us. As I walked away, I heard her sobs grow louder, but I didn't look back. I went to the bedroom and started packing a bag. I couldn't stay in this house any longer. Every corner held memories of a life that was now shattered. I decided to stay at a friend's place for a while. Tom had always been there for me, and I knew he would understand. I called him, and he told me to come over right away. When I arrived, he took one look at me and pulled me into a bear hug. Man, I'm so sorry, he said, his voice full of sympathy. I can't believe this is happening. Me neither, I replied, my voice cracking. I just don't know what to do. I never thought she'd do something like this. We sat down, and I told him everything. He listened without interrupting, letting me get it all out. By the time I finished, I felt a small measure of relief. It helped to talk to someone who wasn't directly involved, someone who could offer a fresh perspective. You did the right thing, Tom said when I was done. You deserve better than this. If she was willing to throw away your marriage for some fling, then she's not the person you thought she was. I know, I said, feeling a fresh wave of sadness. It's just hard to accept. I loved her, Tom. I really did. And you probably still do, he replied gently. But love isn't enough when there's no trust. You'll get through this, man. It won't be easy, but you will. I stayed with Tom for a few days, trying to figure out my next steps. Lisa called and texted constantly, but I ignored her. I needed time to think, to process everything. Eventually, I decided to meet with her one last time to finalize the details. We met at a coffee shop, a neutral place where we could talk without the weight of our shared home hanging over us. Lisa looked tired, her eyes red from crying. She didn't waste any time getting to the point. Alex, I know you don't want to hear this, but I need you to understand. I was lonely. You were always working, always busy. I needed someone to talk to, someone who made me feel wanted. Dan was there, and I made a terrible mistake. But I don't want to lose you. Please, let's go to counseling, try to work this out. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my emotions in check. Lisa, it's too late. You've been lying to me for months, sneaking around behind my back. I can't trust you anymore. Counseling won't change that. But what about everything we've built? Our life, our home? Are you really willing to throw it all away? She pleaded. I shook my head. You threw it away the moment you decided to be with him. I can't live like this, constantly wondering if you're being honest with me. It's over, Lisa. I'm filing for divorce. She started crying again, but I felt nothing but a hollow emptiness. I loved you, Lisa, but I can't forgive this. I can't move past it. You need to accept that. She nodded, tears streaming down her face. I understand. I'm so sorry, Alex. I never meant to hurt you. I know, I said quietly. But you did. And now we both have to live with it. We talked for a while longer, going over the practical details. She agreed to sign the papers, and we made arrangements for the division of our assets. It was a painful conversation, but it needed to be done. When we finally parted ways, I felt a strange mix of relief and sorrow. This chapter of my life was closing, and while it was painful, it also felt necessary. I needed to move forward, to find a way to rebuild my life without Lisa. As I walked away from the coffee shop, I felt the weight of the past few months start to lift. It would be a long road to healing, but at least now I had a direction. I knew what I needed to do, and for the first time in a long time, I felt a glimmer of hope. Returning to Tom's place after that final meeting with Lisa was like stepping into a void. The numbness began to wear off, and the full weight of the situation crashed down on me. The woman I had shared my life with for nearly a decade was now just a painful chapter in my past. I felt adrift, unsure of how to navigate the storm of emotions raging inside me. Tom did his best to be supportive, but there were moments when I just needed to be alone. I would lie awake at night, staring at the ceiling, replaying every argument, every lie, every betrayal. It felt like a never-ending nightmare, and I didn't know how to wake up. During the days, I tried to keep busy. I threw myself into my work, taking on extra projects to fill the hours. My team noticed the change in me, but no one said anything. They probably thought it was just the stress of running a business, and I wasn't about to tell them otherwise. But no matter how busy I kept myself, the pain was always there, lurking in the background. The hardest part was the loneliness. I missed the simple things. The way Lisa and I used to sit together and watch TV, the way she'd laugh at my jokes, the way she'd snuggle up to me in bed. Those moments were gone now, replaced by an empty space that seemed to grow larger with each passing day. I started seeing less of my friends too. It wasn't that they weren't supportive, they were, but I couldn't stand the pity in their eyes, the awkward silences when they didn't know what to say. I felt like a burden, dragging everyone else down with my misery. So I pulled back, isolating myself even more. One evening, a few weeks after the confrontation, Tom found me sitting on the porch, nursing a beer and staring into the distance. He sat down next to me, not saying anything at first. We just sat there, the silence stretching out between us. "Alex," he finally said, breaking the quiet, "you can't keep going like this. You need to talk to someone, get all this stuff off your chest." I shrugged, not meeting his eyes. "What's the point? Talking about it won't change anything. It won't make the pain go away." "No, it won't," he agreed. "But bottling it up isn't helping either. You need to start healing, man. And that means facing your feelings, not running from them." I knew he was right, but the thought of opening up to someone, of laying my soul bare, was terrifying. Still, I promised him I'd think about it. It was a small step, but it was something. The next day, I called my parents. They'd been worried about me, checking in regularly, but I hadn't told them everything. I knew it would break their hearts to hear what Lisa had done, but I needed their support. We talked for hours, and by the end of the conversation, I felt a little lighter. My mom cried, my dad offered practical advice, and for the first time in weeks, I felt a glimmer of hope. But the emotional roller coaster was far from over. There were good days, when I could almost forget the pain, and bad days, when it felt like I was drowning. I kept Lisa's texts and calls blocked, needing the distance to start healing. Occasionally, I'd see something that reminded me of her. A song on the radio, a couple holding hands, and the ache would return, sharp and relentless. I also started journaling, pouring my thoughts and feelings onto the page. It was a way to process everything, to make sense of the chaos inside my head. I wrote about the good times, the bad times, and everything in between. It was painful, but it was also cathartic. One night, I had a dream about Lisa. We were sitting on the couch, talking like we used to, and for a moment, everything felt normal. But then I woke up, and the reality hit me all over again. I couldn't go back to that life, no matter how much I wanted to. I began to see a pattern in my emotions. The anger would flare up first, hot and intense, followed by a deep sadness, then a hollow numbness. It was exhausting, riding this emotional wave day after day. But I tried to remind myself that it was all part of the healing process, that eventually, the waves would become less frequent, less intense. Tom suggested we go out one weekend, just to get me out of the house. We went to a bar we used to frequent, and it felt good to be around people again, to have a few drinks and forget about everything for a while. But then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw a couple dancing, holding each other close, and the ache returned. I excused myself and went outside, needing some air. Tom found me a few minutes later, leaning against the wall, trying to hold back tears. "You okay?" he asked, concern etched on his face. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. He didn't press, just stood there with me, his presence a silent comfort. It was moments like these that reminded me I wasn't alone, that I had people who cared about me. The weeks turned into months, and slowly, very slowly, I started to feel a bit more like myself. I found solace in small things, reading a good book, taking long walks, listening to music. I reconnected with some old friends, people who had known me before Lisa, and their support helped me remember who I was outside of my marriage. One day, I found myself standing in front of the mirror, really looking at myself for the first time in ages. I saw a man who had been through hell and back, but who was still standing. I saw strength, resilience, and a glimmer of hope. It wasn't much, but it was a start. I knew the road ahead would still be difficult. There would be more bad days, more moments of doubt and pain. But I also knew that I had the strength to get through it. I had survived the worst betrayal imaginable, and I was still here, still fighting. Lisa's betrayal had shattered my world, but it hadn't destroyed me. I was beginning to see that I could rebuild, that I could create a new life for myself. It would take time, and it wouldn't be easy, but I was ready to try. In the quiet moments, I would think about what I wanted for my future. I wanted to find happiness again, to build a life that wasn't defined by the past. I wanted to find someone who would love and respect me, someone who would be faithful. But most of all, I wanted to learn to love myself again, to find peace within. As I moved forward, step by painful step, I held on to that vision. It became my guiding light, a beacon of hope in the darkness. And slowly, very slowly, I began to heal. Healing was a slow, arduous process, but as the days turned into weeks, I started to regain a semblance of normalcy. The pain of Lisa's betrayal was still fresh, but I was determined to move forward. However, the anger I felt towards both Lisa and Dan simmered just below the surface, a constant reminder of the injustice I'd suffered. I knew I needed to channel that anger into something productive, something that would give me closure. One evening, as I was flipping through old photo albums, I came across a picture of Lisa and me on our honeymoon. We looked so happy, so full of promise. It was then that I decided I needed to do something more than just move on. I needed to make sure Lisa and Dan understood the full extent of their betrayal. I needed to make them feel the pain they had inflicted on me. I spent the next few days meticulously planning my revenge. It wasn't about causing them physical harm, but rather about exposing their deceit and ensuring they faced the consequences of their actions. I gathered all the evidence I'd collected: photos, texts, emails, and recordings. I knew exactly what I needed to do. First, I compiled everything into a detailed report, documenting the affair from start to finish. I made copies of this report and included all the damning evidence. I addressed these packets to key people in Lisa and Dan's lives, their employers, friends, and family members. I wanted everyone to see the truth, to know what kind of people they were dealing with. I started with Lisa's workplace. She prided herself on her professional reputation, and I knew exposing her affair could jeopardize her career. I sent the packet anonymously, ensuring it would land directly on her boss's desk. I knew her company had a strict policy against fraternization, especially when it involved deception and dishonesty. I could only imagine the fallout from that revelation. Next, I turned my attention to Dan. He was a respected businessman in our community, and his public image was everything to him. I sent packets to his business partners and key clients, knowing that the revelation of his affair with a married woman would likely damage his reputation and business relationships. For Lisa's friends and family, I drafted a heartfelt letter explaining my side of the story. I included copies of the most damning evidence, hoping they would understand the depth of her betrayal. It was painful to expose such intimate details, but I knew it was necessary. They needed to see the truth, to understand why our marriage had ended so abruptly. I timed the delivery of the packets carefully, ensuring they would all arrive on the same day. I wanted the impact to be immediate and overwhelming. As I sealed the last envelope, I felt a sense of grim satisfaction. It wouldn't undo the pain I had suffered, but it was a start. On the day the packets were delivered, I felt a mix of anticipation and anxiety. I waited, knowing the fallout would be swift. I didn't have to wait long. That afternoon, my phone started buzzing with messages and calls from mutual friends and family members. The truth was out, and the reactions were exactly what I had expected. Lisa called me first. I let it go to voicemail. Then came the texts. Angry, pleading, desperate. I read them all, feeling a twisted sense of satisfaction. She was facing the consequences of her actions, just as I had hoped. Dan tried to reach out as well. His messages were filled with threats and attempts to intimidate me into silence. I ignored him. I had no intention of engaging with him directly. My actions had spoken louder than any words could. The next day, I received a call from one of Lisa's close friends, Sarah. She was furious, accusing me of destroying Lisa's life. I calmly explained that Lisa had made her choices and that the consequences were a direct result of her actions. Sarah was taken aback, but I could tell she understood. She knew the truth now, and that was all that mattered. In the following weeks, the fallout continued. Lisa was placed on administrative leave pending an investigation, and Dan faced a backlash from his business associates. The affair became public knowledge, and the social stigma was immense. Lisa's friends distanced themselves from her, and Dan's reputation took a significant hit. I should have felt guilty for what I had done, but I didn't. They had betrayed me in the worst possible way, and now they were facing the consequences. It was justice, plain and simple. And while it didn't erase the pain, it helped to know they were suffering too. As the dust settled, I began to feel a sense of closure. My revenge had been exacted, and it was time to move on. I focused on rebuilding my life, continuing to heal and grow stronger each day. The anger that had fueled my actions began to dissipate, replaced by a sense of peace. I knew I couldn't change the past, but I could control my future. I started taking care of myself, both physically and mentally. I reconnected with old friends, started new hobbies, and even began dating again. It was a slow process, but I was determined to move forward. One evening, as I was sitting on my porch, watching the sunset, I received a text from Lisa. She apologized again, saying she had lost everything and didn't know how to move forward. For the first time, I felt a pang of sympathy, but I also knew I couldn't let her back into my life. I replied, telling her that I hoped she could find a way to rebuild her life, but that I needed to move on. It was a final goodbye, a closing of that painful chapter. She didn't respond, and I knew it was for the best. As the sun dipped below the horizon, I felt a sense of calm wash over me. The past was behind me, and the future was mine to shape. I had faced the darkest moments of my life and come out the other side stronger. It was time to look forward, to embrace the possibilities and rebuild my life on my terms. Revenge had given me closure, but forgiveness, of myself and of Lisa, was what ultimately set me free. I was ready to move forward, to find happiness and peace in a new chapter of my life. The decision to move forward with my life brought with it a new sense of purpose and clarity. I had faced the pain head-on, sought justice, and now it was time to rebuild. It was a daunting task, but one I felt ready to tackle. I started by making changes in my living situation. I couldn't stay with Tom forever, and the house I had shared with Lisa was too full of memories. So, I began looking for a new place. It wasn't easy, but I eventually found a small apartment that felt right. It was modest but cozy, a blank slate where I could start fresh. Moving in was an emotional process. I packed up my belongings, carefully sorting through what to keep and what to leave behind. Some items were too painful to take with me, reminders of a life that was no longer mine. But others, like my books and personal mementos, gave me comfort. They were symbols of who I was and who I was becoming. Once I settled into my new place, I turned my attention to my work. My business had always been a source of pride for me, and it provided a welcome distraction. I threw myself into new projects, taking on challenges that reignited my passion. My team noticed the change, and their support was invaluable. Together, we achieved milestones that I once thought impossible. As the weeks turned into months, I began to explore new hobbies and interests. I took up photography, something I had always wanted to try. Capturing the world through a lens allowed me to see beauty in everyday moments, to appreciate the details I had overlooked. It was therapeutic, a way to process my emotions and express myself creatively. I also started running again. The physical exertion was a perfect outlet for my pent-up energy and frustration. Each run left me feeling stronger, more in control of my body and my mind. I set goals for myself, small at first, but gradually more ambitious. Completing my first 10K was a victory that filled me with pride and confidence. Socially, I began to reconnect with friends I had drifted away from during my marriage. They welcomed me back with open arms, and our gatherings became a source of joy and support. We shared laughs, memories, and sometimes even tears. It was a reminder that I was not alone, that I had a network of people who cared about me. Dating again was something I approached with caution. The wounds from Lisa's betrayal were still fresh, and I didn't want to rush into anything. But eventually, I felt ready to put myself out there. I joined a few dating apps, went on some awkward first dates, and met some interesting people. It was a learning experience, and while it wasn't always easy, it helped me regain my confidence. One evening, I went to a local art gallery opening. It was a charity event, and the atmosphere was lively and welcoming. As I wandered through the exhibits, I struck up a conversation with a woman named Emily. She was intelligent, funny, and shared my love of photography. We spent the evening talking and laughing, and for the first time in a long while, I felt a genuine connection. Emily and I started seeing each other regularly. Our relationship developed slowly, built on mutual respect and understanding. She knew about my past, and I appreciated her patience and kindness. Being with her felt different from my relationship with Lisa. There was no rush, no pressure, just a comfortable companionship that grew stronger with time. One day, as Emily and I were walking in the park, she turned to me and asked, "Alex, do you ever think about the future? What do you want from it?" Her question caught me off guard, but I knew the answer. "I do," I replied. "I want to be happy, to build a life that's fulfilling and honest. I want to be with someone who loves and respects me. And I want to keep growing, keep discovering who I am." She smiled, taking my hand. I think we're on the same page. With Emily by my side, I felt more hopeful than I had in a long time. Our relationship was a testament to the resilience of the human spirit, to the possibility of finding love and happiness after heartbreak. As the anniversary of my confrontation with Lisa approached, I found myself reflecting on how far I had come. The anger and sadness that once consumed me had given way to acceptance and peace. I had built a new life, one that was richer and more meaningful than before. I decided to mark the occasion by doing something symbolic. I went back to the cabin where I had discovered Lisa and Dan's affair. It was a place that had haunted me, but I wanted to reclaim it, to turn it into a memory of my strength and resilience. When I arrived, I stood outside for a moment, taking in the view. The cabin looked the same, but I felt different, stronger. I walked around the property, remembering the pain, but also acknowledging my growth. As the sun set, I took out my camera and captured the beauty of the moment. It was a personal victory, a testament to my journey. Returning home, I felt a sense of closure. The past was behind me, and I was ready to fully embrace the future. I had faced betrayal, sought justice, and found love again. The scars were there, but they were a part of me, reminders of my strength and resilience. That evening, Emily and I celebrated quietly, toasting to new beginnings and the journey ahead. I knew there would still be challenges, but I also knew I was equipped to face them. With her by my side and a renewed sense of purpose, I was ready for whatever life had in store. In the end, it wasn't just about moving on from the betrayal. It was about finding myself, about building a life that was true to who I was. It was about love, not just for someone else, but for myself. And as I looked into the future, I felt nothing but hope and excitement for what was to come. The year following my confrontation with Lisa and the subsequent journey of rebuilding my life was one of profound growth and transformation. As I sat down to write this, I couldn't help but reflect on everything that had happened: the betrayal, the pain, the anger, and ultimately, the healing. It had been a tumultuous ride, but one that led me to a place of peace and self-discovery. Lisa and I finalized our divorce without much drama. She accepted the terms, probably realizing that fighting would only prolong the inevitable and deepen the scars. There were moments of regret and apologies, but they felt hollow, too late to mend what had been broken. Our paths diverged, and we went our separate ways, each left to grapple with the aftermath of our choices. Moving into my new apartment had been a significant milestone. It was more than just a change of address. It was a declaration of independence and a step toward reclaiming my life. I filled the space with things that brought me joy and comfort, creating a sanctuary that was distinctly mine. Each piece of furniture, every photo on the wall, reflected my journey from heartbreak to healing. My relationship with Emily continued to flourish. She became a steady presence in my life, offering support and love without any of the complications that had plagued my past. We shared many beautiful moments together: weekend getaways, quiet nights in, and long walks that often ended in deep, meaningful conversations. Emily wasn't just a partner, she was a friend, someone who understood and accepted me for who I was. Work remained a cornerstone of my life. The projects I undertook with my team weren't just about business. They were about proving to myself that I could succeed, that I could build something strong and lasting even in the face of adversity. We celebrated many victories, big and small, and each one reinforced my belief in my own resilience and capability. One particularly memorable moment was when my company won a significant contract that I had been pursuing for months. It felt like a validation of all the hard work and late nights, a symbol of my ability to rise above personal challenges and achieve professional success. My team threw a small party to celebrate, and as we toasted to our achievement, I felt a deep sense of pride and accomplishment. But it wasn't just about professional success. My personal growth was equally important. I continued running, participating in local races, and setting new personal records. I explored photography more deeply, capturing the world around me in ways that I had never noticed before. Each photo was a testament to my journey, a snapshot of a life rebuilt from the ashes of betrayal. One day, while sorting through my photos, I came across the ones I had taken at the cabin where I confronted Lisa and Dan. Looking at those images now, they didn't bring back the pain and anger I had felt then. Instead, they represented a turning point, a moment of courage and determination that had set me on the path to where I was today. I decided to frame one of those photos and place it in my apartment as a reminder of my journey. It wasn't about holding on to the past, but about honoring my resilience and the strength it took to move forward. It was a symbol of how far I had come and the new life I had built. As the months passed, my relationship with Emily grew even stronger. We started talking about the future, about the possibility of moving in together, and perhaps even getting married someday. It was a conversation filled with hope and excitement, a stark contrast to the fear and uncertainty that had defined my previous relationship. One evening, as we were sitting on the porch of my apartment watching the sunset, Emily turned to me and said, "Alex, do you ever think about what you've learned from all of this, from everything that's happened?" I nodded, taking her hand in mine. "I think about it a lot," I admitted. "I've learned that I'm stronger than I ever thought possible, that I can survive the worst kind of betrayal and still come out the other side. I've learned the importance of self-respect and the need to let go of things that hurt me." She squeezed my hand, her eyes filled with understanding. "And what about love? What have you learned about love?" I smiled, feeling a warmth spread through me. "I've learned that love isn't about possession or control. It's about mutual respect, trust, and understanding. It's about supporting each other's dreams and being there through the good times and the bad. And I've learned that I'm capable of loving again, even after everything." Emily leaned in and kissed me softly. "I'm so glad you found your way back to love, Alex, and I'm honored to be a part of your journey." As we sat there, wrapped in each other's arms, I felt a profound sense of peace. The past year had been filled with challenges and heartache, but it had also been a journey of self-discovery and healing. I had faced my darkest moments and emerged stronger, wiser, and more determined to build a life filled with love and happiness. The betrayal that once defined me was now just a chapter in my story, not the whole book. I had learned to forgive, not just Lisa but myself as well. I had let go of the anger and bitterness, making room for new experiences and new love. Reflecting on my journey, I realized that while Lisa's betrayal had shattered my world, it had also forced me to confront my own weaknesses and strengths. It had pushed me to grow in ways I never thought possible, to find a deeper understanding of myself and what I truly wanted from life. The future stretched out before me, filled with possibilities. With Emily by my side, I felt ready to embrace whatever came next. We were planning trips, talking about our dreams, and making new memories together. Each day was a step further away from the pain of the past, and a step closer to a future filled with hope and joy. As I closed the book on this chapter of my life, I knew that the journey was far from over. There would be new challenges, new adventures, and new lessons to learn. But I was ready. I had faced the storm and found my way through. Now it was time to enjoy the calm, to build a life that was truly mine. In the end, my story wasn't just about betrayal and revenge. It was about resilience, growth, and the enduring power of love. It was about finding the strength to move forward and the courage to open my heart again. And as I looked into the future, I felt nothing but gratitude for the journey that had brought me to this place. With Emily's hand in mine and the promise of new beginnings, I was ready to write the next chapter. The past was behind me, and the future was filled with endless possibilities. And for the first time in a long time, I felt truly at peace.